Hey everyone, welcome back to Code of the Row. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to create a fully networked interactable light switch in Unreal Engine 5. So we'll set up multiplayer using enhanced input, handle client server replication, and make sure the player can toggle this switch so the client will be able to see it instantly. Let me just drag in my second client window. And then as soon as so you can see my character moving properly here, when I turn this off, you can see that it correctly turns off the light switch like so. And then if I hover over it or look at it with my camera, because I'm using a line trace, it will turn it back on for both characters or on both screens. So let's go ahead and just check this out. This is very intro to multiplayer in Blueprints. So let's go ahead and get started. So now that I have my blank third-person project open, I'm just going to go ahead and just change my play mode and play settings to make sure number of players is set to 2. And then under net mode, I'm going to actually play as listen server so that I can have one person play as the server and one person play as the client. If you're not sure which one's which, it'll say on the tab client 1 over here next to net mode, and then your main screen will be your server 0. So I'll go ahead and exit out of that. So I'm going to start off by heading over to the content folder, right clicking and creating a new folder called interactables. And I'm going to go into it. And the first thing I actually want to start with is just creating a simple light switch. So I'm going to right click and let's create a blueprint class. And this will be a simple actor, which is just an object that can be placed in the world. So let's go ahead and click on actor and I'll call this BP underscore light switch like so. Now I'm going to double click to open this up. And you can see it's just a blank actor. And all I need to do is go ahead and let's add a static mesh. And I'll just leave the name as static mesh. And over here on the right side in the details panel, you'll see static mesh. And I'm just going to go ahead and search for a sphere or a ball. And there's its SM ball underscore 1, which looks really high end. This should be pretty default and already included within your Unreal Engine. And next thing I'm going to do is, because this is a light switch, I'm going to go ahead and click add and look for a point light. So I'll go ahead and click point light. And I'm just going to go ahead and move this down a little bit. And let's change the light color to red. And now let's actually drag this into our scene and see how this looks. So I'm just going to drag it right here, like so. It's not, I want it to be a little bit more visible. So I'm going to increase the point light part. Let's increase the intensity to the max. Attenuation radius to the max, source radius, I'll do something like, I guess, 300. It's going to have a very big coat of light on this ball, but no worries. And now the light is actually pretty visible. And then I'm just going to go ahead and click on point light and scroll down until I see one of these tabs called replicate or replication. So it says component replication. I'm going to make sure that this is checked. It pretty much just tells this actor component to automatically synchronize across all the servers and all the clients in a network multiplayer game. It's basically saying like, hey, turn me on for everyone, not just the character who clicks on this. So I'll go ahead and compile and save. And right now, this is just a light switch. So now let me go ahead and go to my level. And this light actually does look pretty good. So I think I'm going to be sticking with this. So now what I'm going to do next is create some sort of logic where we're going to be able to control this light by going over to point light and setting the visibility on and off like so. And just as simple as that, let's go ahead and just create an actor component. So I'll head back to my scene view. And then in the interactable folders, I'm just going to right click and create a blueprint class and look for an actor component. The reason why we're doing an actor component as opposed to just doing it on the light switch itself is just in case you have multiple light switches in your game or anything that needs to set the visibility on and off, you can just attach this actor component and just attach it to whatever needs to be set on and off. So let's go ahead and create this actor component. I'll just go ahead and call this switch logic component like so, and let's double click to open this up. Now in this switch logic component, let's go ahead and actually add this to our BP light switch. So I'm simply just going to go to the left while we're on BP light switch, click on add and look for that switch logic component like so, and just go ahead and add it and hit compile and save. And now we're going to go back to the switch logic component. In here, all I need to do is just add a variable, and I'm just going to call this something like B is light on, because we're going to actually toggle our light using this actor component. And now, very important, I want to make sure this is replicated because I am making this for multiplayer. And in order to do that, you're just going to click on the variable itself. And on the right under details, you'll see a tab called replication. So pretty much what this is if you hover over it, it simply says, should this variable be replicated over the network? And I'm just going to select replicated, which just means this variable will be seen across the network. So I'll hit compile and save like so. And I can go ahead and delete the event begin play and event tick. And now I just want to toggle the light. So I'm going to right click and create a custom event. And I'll call this something like toggle light. And all we're going to do is flip the switch. So every single time we touch the light or interact with this light, we want to set it to the opposite of what this B is light on is. So I'm going to drag this and get the setter. And I'll just go ahead and connect the execution pins like so. I'll hover over both and click Q to just straighten out the line. And now this is light on needs to be switched. So I'm simply just going to grab this again and get what it currently is set to, and then just set it to the opposite by looking for a not Boolean, and then connecting this pin over here like so. So let's say, for example, our light is currently on. And now that this is true, whenever we interact with it, it will not be on and set it to off. And vice versa. So I'll go ahead and hit compile and save here. And now we actually need to update the visuals itself. So let's go ahead and create another custom event. And let's just call this update light visuals like so. And from here, I'm just going to drag out this execution pin and look for an is valid. I'm going to scroll down and look for the one with the question mark next to it. And this is pretty much just going to determine if the object is valid. And the reason why you want to add is valid is just because in Unreal, if you try to use a variable or a reference or a component that's currently null, you may get some sort of errors, or you may have your engine crash and so on. It's just to prevent errors and crashes during runtime. And now we need an input object. So what are we checking for that is going to be valid? Well, I have my switch logic component on this actor itself. And I don't want to call this actor specifically, but this is the owner of this actor component. So I'm just going to right click and look for get owner. And from here, I'm simply just going to go ahead and get component by class. Because in this case, I'm actually just going to be doing this specifically for point lights. So under the component class, I'm going to search for point light, and you'll see something called a point light component. And I'll have this return value connect to this input object. So we're going to be checking if the owner of this switch logic component has a component class, which is a point light component. And in our case, if we head over to our BP light switch, we do indeed have a point light component, as we can see when we hover over this point light. And if this is valid, we just want to go ahead and set the visibility. So I'm going to drag this return value and look for the set visibility like so, and then connect the is valid pin to this set visibility. But this new visibility should be toggled by our Boolean we created is the light on. Because whenever we set this to on, the visibility will also be on. And if it's false, then it will also be false like so. Now, one really important thing is we're never actually calling this custom event. And that's because at the end of toggle light, we want to go ahead and just look for the update light visuals so that this will be called. And we're actually not even calling this event to begin the toggle light, but we'll go ahead and do that when we create our interact next. But first, I need to make sure that this will actually run on the server. So when I go ahead and hover over toggle light, there's a tab called replicates, and I want to go ahead and change this to run on server. And this will make sure that when I do end up calling the toggle lights, this is going to execute on the server. And then for update light visuals, you'll see under replicates, I actually want to use multicast. And the reason why we use multicast is because this toggle light will already run on the server, and it will also update this as well on the server too. And the point of multicast is so that when you want everyone, including the server itself and all clients, to see the result of something the server did. So in this case, we want the light to be updated across the server and all the clients. So in this example, we're just creating a custom event that's going to run on server, which will begin this event, and then it's going to call a multicast event to update everyone's game. And now with this ready to go, let's go ahead and actually create a way for us to interact with our light object. So I'm going to go back to our scene, and then I'm just going to simply go to the inputs folder, go to actions, right click, under input, look for input action, and I'll just call this IA underscore interact. And I'll double click to open this up, and I'll just leave it as is, like so. Digital Boolean is fine because it's a simple on and off. And then I'm just going to go back to my scene, go back to the inputs folder, and look for the IMC underscore default. This is our input mapping context where we assign our controls. Under mappings, I'm going to click this plus sign and look for IA underscore interact, the one we just created. Open this up. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on this keyboard. And when it's yellow, you can select whatever you want. I'm going to click the E key to interact like so. And that's pretty much all we need to create our interact button. But now I actually need to make this work and functional. So what I need to do is head over to my BP third person character. And I'll just scroll down to the bottom, right click here, and look for that IA underscore interact we created like so under enhance action events. And now whenever we trigger the interact, it's going to do something. And we can simply test this out by adding a print string. And I'm in the string container, I'm just going to type in interact like so. And let's actually hit compile and try this out. So when I go ahead and click E, on the top left, you'll see it says server interact. And if I do it on my second player, it's also going to say client 1 interact like so. So we know that the interact key is working for both, but let's actually make it do something. So going back to our BP third person character, I'm going to delete this print string. And what I want to do is look for some sort of way to get what I'm pointing at with my camera. And in order to do that, I'm just going to look for a line trace by channel. And now I need to see how long is our line going to be. But basically what I'm doing is every time our line hits something, we're going to be interacting with that object. And in this case, we're just going to be looking at this point light, whether it's from this angle, if I move my camera here, or this angle, if I move my camera here. As long as I'm looking at this light in the center of my screen, it should hit it and then toggle it on or off. So the start point is just simply going to be the world location of our follow camera, which is going to be this part, because this is what's going to move when we use our mouse to look around in our third person character. So in the event graph, I'm just going to drag in the follow camera and then actually just get the world location like so. And that will be our starting point. Now we can determine how far we want to look out or how far the line will be from our starting position. And I'm simply just going to drag the return value of the world location, click the plus button, and we want to add it simply by the forward vector. So basically where we're looking at with our follow camera. So I'll drag out follow camera and get forward vector. And this is pretty much just going to say where we're looking in this world. So if I'm looking up, then the interaction will be straight ahead from where I'm looking at this point, and so on. And we're going to go ahead and multiply the distance of this forward vector. And I want to multiply it by a float. I don't want it to be an XYZ. I just want it to be a float, single precision. And let's do something like 500. And we'll be adding that to the world location of our camera to get that 500 units of a line to be our start and end point. So if you want to just get a feel for what this looks like, I'm going to change draw debug type to forward duration. Click on this open arrow and make sure trace color is red. If it hits something, it'll be green and so on. But I'll just go ahead and hit compile and click play. And now when I go ahead and click E, you're going to see these lines come out from where my camera is looking. In this case, the camera is always looking at my character, so it'll hit through my character, which is not a problem. We'll just find a way to make sure that it hits the point light and we tell it to get the hit actors. And we'll go back to our BP third person character. And to me, that looks pretty cool. If you want this line to be longer, you can change this from 500 to 1000 or whatever feels best. And now you'll see this called out hit. And if you hover over it, it says properties of the trace hit, the hit results, and so on. And all we're going to do is just simply drag this out and look for the break hit result and click on this down arrow to see everything. And now you'll see this hit actor. And all I want to do is just drag this out and let's do a simple print string. So from our execution in the line trace by channel, look for a print string, and I want to print out the name of this hit actor. It's going to simply get the display name, and that's pretty much what's going to be shown in the hierarchy. So when I click on this, it should print out BP light switch whenever I hit E over it. So now when I go next to it, hit E, you'll see it says server BP light switch because this is my server character. And if I do the same thing with my client, it'll say client 1 BP light switch like so. But I want to be able to tell the game that we're able to interact with this object. I shouldn't be able to interact with every single thing in the world because I don't need to turn the visibility on and off. And we'll be doing this by creating a blueprint interface. The whole point of a blueprint interface, it's like a contract or a set of instructions that you can give to any blueprint. So let's actually go ahead and explain this while we do this. So I'm going to go back to my scene, go back to my interactables folder, right click, and let's create under blueprint. There's something called a blueprint interface. And I'll go ahead and call this BPI underscore interactable like so, and double click to open this up. Now, as soon as you open it, it's going to tell you to rename this function. I'm just going to call this interact, and that's pretty much all we need in this. So now this blueprint interface with interactable, we're actually going to add this to our light switch. So head over to your BP light switch, and then you'll see this tab called class settings, and we want to go ahead and implement this interface. So I'm going to click add and look for the BPI interactable we created like so. And now when I go ahead and hit compile, you're going to notice on the bottom here under interfaces, there is now a little thing called interact. So I can double click that and it'll take me to the event graph and actually just add this event that we've created called interact. But what we need to do now is from our third person character is also call this interact function. I can simply just call it after this print string. So I'm going to look for the interact, and you'll see this interact message from the class called BPI interactable like so. And the target is what we're going to be interacting with. And in this case, I want to be interacting with the hit actor, aka what I'm looking at and what I'm clicking E on, like so, and hit compile and save. And what this is going to do is if you double click this interact, it's going to take you to this blueprint interface showing that we are calling this interact from our third person character. And since we're calling this interact from our blueprint light switch, like so, because this is implementing the interface called interact, now we can simply just do another print string to test this out. And I'll just say something like turn on light switch and hit compile and save. And now when we go back to our level and I click E, it's going to say turn on light switch on the top left, like so. And it's still printing out our hit actor, which is showing the BP light switch. But let's go ahead and get rid of the other print strings. So I'll go ahead and stop the game. I'm going to go back to my third person character. I'll get rid of this print string and the display name. Oh, let me reconnect that execution pin. Going to need that. And then I'll go back to my BP light switch and I can actually just get rid of this print string because we know it is working. So from this interact, now I can finally call the switch logic component toggle light, which will handle the rest as soon as I toggle it. So I'm simply just going to go back to my BP switch light and drag the switch logic component like so. And from here, I can call the toggle light because this toggle light is a function of switch logic component or a custom event, not a function, which is located in here like so. And then I'm simply just going to connect this and let's actually test it out if it works. Now when I go over to my level and interact with this, you'll see that it works on my screen, but we're having a huge issue. The light is still showing on my client. And for some reason, my client can't even turn it off. But when I click E, nothing's happening, but it is hitting this indeed. But let me turn it back on and off. And you'll see that it didn't even turn it off on this screen. So what could be going on? Well, earlier in our switch logic component, we had these events toggle to run on the server. And for the update light visuals, we're using a multicast, which is working properly as we can see so. But our interact button isn't actually interacting with the server. This is just happening from the third person character and is going to be a local input. Now let's create the interact on the server. So I'm going to right click and create a custom event, and I'll just call this something like server. I'll just call this server interact with actor. And the same way we have this hit actor going to our interact here, I need to add an input to tell what actor we're going to be interacting with from the server side. So while this is highlighted, I'm going to change replicates to run on server. And then for the inputs, I'm simply just going to add an actor. And let's just call this target actor. Now I'll go ahead and hit compile and save. And I'm going to move this interact down here. And the target actor will be set to the target of interact, and the execution pin will follow like so. And now after the line trace by channel, I want to call the server interact with actor and connect the execution pin from here to here, and the target actor will be this hit actor. So what this is going to do for us is from the line trace, when we get our hit actor, what we're looking at, and in this case, it's going to be our light component, then it will use our custom event server interact with actor, and it's going to send the information that the hit actor is the target actor. And the target actor is what's going to actually be interacted with because we created this interactable interface, which is called from our light switch. And then this is going to toggle the light, which is going to call this custom event, and it's going to do the rest and set the visibility like so. As long as the component by class has a point light component, and in this case, our BP light switch has a point light component like so. And now when I go ahead and test this on my server and my client, you'll see that when I interact with this, the light does indeed turn off, but not for my client. But for some reason, my client can actually interact with this and turn it on and off for my server. So because we know the client can do this properly, and as well as the server, we know that something is actually wrong with our BP light switch and something's not replicating on our actor. So I'm going to go ahead and hit stop. And from here, I will go to the BP light switch. And as you can see, as soon as I click BP light switch under replication, we actually don't have the replicates checked. We don't have replicates checked. This is actually unchecked. And this is really important because we want this to properly replicate across the network, which just means that this will replicate across the network and we'll be able to see the same thing on our servers and clients. So I'll hit compile and save. And now when I go ahead and hit play, I should see the appropriate results as expected. So you can see it is off. And now with my client, when I go ahead and interact with this, it does turn off for both my server and my client indeed. Now, something is a little finicky with Unreal Engine 5.6. These third-person templates give me, I can't actually move my mouse whenever I use this character, but when I use the server, I can move my mouse just fine up here. And let's go ahead and actually just fix that real quick. So I'll go ahead and hit stop, and then I'll go to my BP third-person character. And up here, you're going to see this event possessed. And this is basically going to tell where the player controller is, cast to the player controller, and add our IMC or our input mapping context like so. And then again, down here on receive controller changed. And let's go ahead and just make it so that we can turn our mouse around because it's a little annoying to be very stagnant. So I'm going to get rid of the event possessed. I'm actually going to get rid of everything behind this enhance input local subsystem and switch on string and delete that. And I'm just going to change this to event begin play. And then I'm going to make sure there's an is valid node just to make sure nothing goes wrong, just so we don't crash. Connect the execution pins like so. And if our enhance input local player subsystem is valid, then we'll proceed on. And from here, I just want to make sure I get the player controller like so. And then I'll hit compile and save. And now when I go ahead and hit play, now I can move around my client, and actually it's easier for me to aim like this. So much better this way. And now we can toggle this on and off on both our server and our client like so. And that's a really simple tutorial on how to work with network replication using blueprints only, no C++ necessary, and we're able to switch the light on and off. Thanks for watching Code of the Row. Like, subscribe, comment below what you want to see next. If you want any other examples, feel free to let me know in the comment below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.